A feeling of deja vu for the Cincinnati Bengals in their preseason debut as Joe Burrow and the offense ball out and the defense has work to do.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Liscow, he's James Rapien, and we've been covering the Cincinnati Bengals here on Locked On Bengals since 2016, and we finally have a game to talk about here in 2025. The preseason debut is down. Welcome back to the everydayers. Welcome back to those of you who make Locked On Bengals your first listen, and if you're new to the show and you need a daily Bengals fix, you're in the right place. Just hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube, and you'll make sure you catch every episode. Approaching 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. Shout out to all of you who subscribe there. James, today we cover what went well, the offense, what went poorly, pretty much everything else, and what the individual performances looked like outside of the number ones on offense. But we start, of course, with Joe Burrow as the Bengals drop their preseason opener to Philadelphia 27-34.
It didn't take long for Joe Burrow to realize, or to remind everyone at least, that he's arguably the best quarterback on the planet. And he was awesome. And he said it was average afterwards, whatever, average, smaverage. If, by the way, if that was an average performance from Joe, then the Bengals are going to be just fine, even with all the defensive stuff that we're going to get into coming up in a couple of minutes. But 9 of 10, 123. It was at 122 yards, and now it's at 123. So the NFL must have adjusted it mid-game or toward the end of the game. 157.5 passer rating, that adjusted by 0.04 as well. And so just awesome. 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown, Tanner Hudson, just awesome effort. The second touchdown, just, well, real easy. Jamar jog to the end zone. He makes that look so easy. But Joe was dialed in, he was what you would expect him to look like against some backups.
Yep.
Right. And I, maybe that's why he said, I was average, is because he was awesome, but he was going up against backups. And guess what? When you're playing in your first most meaningful preseason action of your career, because of all this stuff about a fast start, you better go out there and kick the crap out of some backups. And that's what he did.
They actually did some stuff. PFF had them down for 4 play action dropbacks for Joe Burrow out of his many dropbacks in this game. He had a touchdown pass to Jamar Chase that was erased by a penalty. Lucas Patrick tripped. He then ended up tripping a lineman who was engaged with Amarius Mims, so it was called for a high-low illegal block there. So we had 3 touchdown passes in this game. One of them after they were backed up to 1st and goal from the 21-yard line, I think it was, after that personal foul. And Tanner Hudson, opposite to last year's week 1 regular season action, fights over the goal line with the ball in his hand. Tanner Hudson had a great game, by the way, as a receiver. We'll talk about him in a little bit more depth throughout the show. I thought Joe was really good. I thought Joe was better in this game than he was in week 1 last year. And I don't think it's particularly close. And that's really what you're looking for. You're looking for him to, against backups especially, have command of the offense, be on time, be accurate. And he lamented his miss to T. Higgins on the first throw of the game. You could tell he patted himself on the chest after that throw. PFF put it down as a drop. I disagree. It was a not terribly accurate, but catchable ball for T. Higgins. Maybe he could have caught it, but I think Joe rightly took the blame for that one. He said after the game that he wanted that one back. But outside of that, again, in command, knowing where the ball needed to go, protections were set well, and generally looking very comfortable playing on time. That's what you're looking for from Joe Burrow to start the season. When Joe Burrow is playing on time, that's when he's a special quarterback. When he's processing the way we know he can process, when the ball's coming out at the perfect time, with the anticipation, with the accuracy that we're used to from Joe Burrow, that's what makes him a special quarterback. In addition to all the playmaking, I know some of you are probably thinking about that too, but we saw that from him, and I know it was against a lower level of competition, but to see that in preseason week 1 is auspicious to me. If he's not closer to midseason form in week 1 this year than we've seen him to start an NFL season, then I don't know what would get him to that point, given what we've seen from him so far in training camp and in this game.
For sure. And this is something that I'll highlight. It's been the most consistent training camp of his career, where there just haven't been many lows. And yeah, there's an interception here, but like there haven't been just awful days. I remember Joe as a rookie, there were full on days where you're like, yeah, it just wasn't his day. And since then, I feel like there's been times where that was the case, including last year, certainly coming off of the wrist. But he's been really steady. And tonight is another example of that. And honestly, after one drive, Jake, I was like, that's it. That's all I need. That's all I need. Like, I don't need him to go back out there. And thank goodness, who was it that was bearing down on him? On
Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
That's who it was. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Thank goodness he held up.
A little bit. I mean, he still got popped a little bit there.
But he could have like popped him.
Yeah.
Like, and
imagine
would it have caused a ruckus? Yeah.
Man, imagine being the guy who just blows up Joe Burrow in a meaningless preseason game, though.
But like, imagine not being that guy if you don't want to like, and so yeah, like you want to be aggressive, but you also want to be safe. I'm not saying that like anyone would, but yeah, I just thank you, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. for not not doing the whole penalty thing, but two, it would have probably caused a huge fight. It would, and it should have if he did do that, but he didn't. And so there is risk in playing in these preseason games. One down when it comes to Joe Burrow's health. That's great because it paid off, and it is going to help him. Like the rep with T, like that is going to matter. It might just be one throw, but that throw matters. And Joe's gonna have thought about it. You could tell he had thought about it multiple times and ran that play through his mind. It's just like, I got to make a better throw. All right. And as long as it leads to him being ready to go where he does make that throw in Cleveland, then it is worth it. But boy, oh boy, is there risk involved. And so thank goodness Jeremiah Trotter Jr. held up.
And he would have been most likely okay. We did see Anthony Richardson dislocate his pinky. Yeah. But that's Anthony Richardson not throwing hot when he needs to throw hot. Joe Burrow, a better player, knows when the ball has to be out, got the ball out on time on that play. So Jeremiah Trotter knows he can't run through him because you're inviting a penalty if you harm one of the protected assets in the NFL, that being a quarterback, especially star quarterbacks who sometimes, not often in Joe Burrow's case, but sometimes get preferential treatment. In addition to Joe Burrow, though, Ja'Marr Chase, obviously fantastic, did everything you would want from Ja'Marr Chase, looks much better than he did in week 1 last year as well. The toe tap on the sideline, on the back shoulder throw, not fair, reprising his Dallas late game touchdown on the out route where he sticks his foot in the ground, breaks back in the middle of the field. Keely Ringo overruns it, has no shot. Keely Ringo against Ja'Marr Chase, just something Joe Burrow went out a few times in this game to great effect.
Barbecue chicken.
I also thought that Joe was on time in the check down game. I've mentioned his timing, though, enough here. Let's continue on the topic of the offensive running game. For the few carries that Chase Brown had, he had 5 carries. And the protection, I thought, with the first team were encouraging. There's, of course, one ugly Lucas Patrick rep to talk about, but that right guard battle will continue a little bit here. We'll get our thoughts out there and then shift to the defense coming up next.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, it can and it will with Monarch Money. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch is going to help you identify things you're spending on, things you should spend on, things you probably don't want to be spending on, but you don't realize you're spending on. And it's going to just make everything more efficient. Joe Burrow wants to be efficient. You want to be efficient when it comes to your money. Guess what? Monarch can help you do that. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a financial command center that's going to manage everything and put everything in one spot for you, whether it's your bank accounts, your investments, all of your spending in one place. So Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The show is sponsored by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff just a month away, and that means fantasy football is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. And well, I would know if it's like never before. I looked while I was in town, and we learned we were partnering with Yahoo Fantasy, James, and found that my first fantasy league was back in the early 2000s. And well, that means I've been doing this for a while, and they've been doing it for 28 years. And to celebrate those 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team each week is eliminated until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can, of course, still play in the head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL.
All right, Jake, let's get to Chase Brown, who I thought looked good. I was like, man, oh man, it's Chase is on the case. You had Jamar Chase, and he was making plays, finished with 70+ yards. And then Chase Brown finishes with nearly 50 yards from scrimmage, 5 carries, 23 yards, had multiple nice holes to run through. And then the Chase Brown dump off, good luck. Because that is, can you imagine doing everything right and Joe Burrow calmly just finds his running back in the flat and Chase Brown gets you 8 yards, gets you 6 yards, gets you 17 yards. Like, that's going to be a weapon for the Bengals to use.
Chase Brown looked like he did late in the season. He was on pace he played a quarter, right? So on pace for nearly 200 yards. I guess by that logic, Jamar Chase was on pace for 320 yards or so. So those guys had nice first quarters. Obviously, they finished with 2 possessions in the first quarter, and that's not exactly how pace for yards works. But both guys had really good first quarters. I thought Chase Brown looked very, very good in his role. And notably, Samaje Perine was the third down back, and that looks to be his role, where Taj Brooks may be the direct backup to Chase Brown, although I did think Taj Brooks had at least one nice play in pass pro that I noticed. I'm sure he had more than one opportunity, but there was maybe actually 2. There's one where he was directly picking a guy up, and one really nice chip that I believe was Taj Brooks. I thought Taj looked like an NFL running back as well. Not as good of a stat line for him. 10 carries for 26 yards for Taj Brooks. He didn't have a catch. Oh, no, he did have a catch. Sorry. 1 catch for 3 yards. But did look like a professional running back to me, and excited to see that development. On the topic of the offensive line, did you have anything else on the running backs before I jump there?
Yeah, if you had swapped out Taj Brooks for Chase Brown, I think the first team offense would have still operated at a high level.
You get a little bit less burst, but I agree. I think you get in the run game, especially.
They're different backs, but it would have worked. And that's what you want to see. I
think I would like to see more from Taj Brooks in the receiving game. And that's an area of Chase Brown's game that's really developed over his time in the NFL, and he puts a lot of work in there. And I don't think we've seen a ton of Taj Brooks in that role. But I think that as a runner, Taj Brooks could slide in and do that job. On the topic of the offensive line, what'd you think of the first team, James? Dylan Fairchild, notably, was not notable for bad reasons, and may have even stood out for good reasons in the run game. Held up well with his assignment against the 2s for the Eagles. And the only real blemish, as far as I could tell, was 1 bad rep for Lucas Patrick and 1 unlucky rep for Lucas Patrick.
Yeah, I didn't notice the offensive line much. And when that happens, it means they're doing their job. And obviously, Joe, the reason why I pointed out him getting hit when he did is because, well, that moment stands out. And so that means they held up their end of the bargain. Look, for Dylan Fairchild, whether it's fair or not, and it's fair if you're going to start in this league, you're going up against backups. You're not going up against your former Georgia teammates that you will see if you play the Eagles again. And so you needed to do that. You needed to play well and get acclimated well. And the standard was high, whether it's fair or not. And I do think it's fair because they need to get him there week 1. And that's it. That's what these games are about. How do you develop and get there so week 1 you're firing on all cylinders? Keep that in mind when we talk about the defense coming up. And I'm not trying to be optimistic. I'm just trying to be real here. But no, it was good to see Dylan get out there and have a successful debut. I think he's made of the right stuff. I love his attitude. I keep coming back to, man, it's just a lot to ask a third rounder to come in and be this starting left guard in this offense that's going to throw the ball all over the field. But test number 1, it was a minor test. It was a pop quiz. Well, not pop quiz, but it was a quiz. But he handled business with the quiz, no doubt.
Looking forward to seeing the film there as well to see how the technique held up or if it was just good results. It was a limited sample size. He had 11 pass blocking snaps and 5 run blocking snaps. So obviously not a huge sample size there for Dylan Fairchild. That is the downside to him working primarily with the ones, is that he went out when Joe Burrow went out. And so where normally for a third round rookie in their first preseason game, they might play a little bit longer, Fairchild only played for those snaps with the first team. And I think that was generally something that held up with a lot of guys. Like where certain players were using this game, I thought was weird, James, as we transitioned to talk about some things that weren't the first team offense. Not that I think Dylan Fairchild going out is strictly weird per se, but I also, part of me thinks he could have benefited from a little bit more experience as well. But I understand trying to work that chemistry with the guys he's going to be playing with. I don't really understand it as much for Shamar Stewart, and I'm curious to get your thoughts here as well. He got in a little bit with the ones at 3 technique, but only played 18 snaps tonight. And I don't know why it was only 18 snaps. I mean, maybe we should talk about the first team defense before we get into snap counts, but I would have liked to have seen more from Shamar Stewart in this game.
Sure, because he should be a first teamer. There, I'll say it. We could talk about the first team. Shamar Stewart should be part of the first team. We notice him, and I don't think he's perfect. But how much did you notice those first team defensive ends tonight that should be winning?
In the pass rush, not at all. And that's one of my biggest concerns coming out of this game is that against the backup Eagles offensive line,
yes,
those guys should have been winning one-on-ones, and they weren't.
And by the way, there's a lot of Trey stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point. I don't need Trey tonight. I'm totally fine that you don't have Trey tonight. But guess what you're going to have to need? Tonight was just a reminder that Trey does matter.
Yes.
Which we don't necessarily need that reminder, but we're less than a month away from the regular season opener. If you're listening to this on Friday morning, which odds are you are, because we're 20 minutes away from midnight, Jake, as we record this. So yeah, I think Shamar Stewart is one of their best four defensive linemen. Within reason, or one of their best 2 defensive ends, if you want to put it that way. Like I think he's going to start sooner rather than later, even with the flaws and the because he's physically gifted enough, even if his pass rush move set isn't elite, that he can still win. And in these other guys, even if they do win, a lot of times it isn't impactful. And I think Shamar is so gifted that he can be impactful. Kind of like Amarius last year, where he was just so physically imposing. He could win even if he wasn't technique sound.
I think it'll be a major part of the package. And yeah, I mean, it might take a little bit of time, but he's going to force his way onto the field at some point this season in a more significant way than he was out there tonight. Now, the starters didn't play a ton. Joseph Osai had 14 snaps. Chris Jenkins had 14 snaps. Miles Murphy had 14 snaps. You're getting the idea here. There are about 14 snaps for the starters, DJ Turner included. The only one of the defensive starters that didn't make it to that number was Geno Stone. So keeping an eye on him. He may have injured himself sometime early in this game, maybe trying to chase down that explosive run early in the game. But let's get the rest of our thoughts out here on the defensive side of the ball as we continue our conversation regarding the Bengals' first preseason game that leaves something to be desired for that defense coming up next.
Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or making memories with friends, this one's a hole in one for your energy game. And let's be honest, it's August. It is time. You need that energy boost. I know Jake did the other day when he was traveling from his hometown. That's right. Jake Liscow is from Cincinnati, for all those that are wondering, all the way to Canada. He took 4 planes, 2 trains, 3 automobiles, and 2 ferries. But he got back to Canada, and you know what? 5-hour energy helped him get there. So whether you're trying to turn 18 into 36 holes, or whether you're trying to take 5 planes, 2 trains, and 4 automobiles back to Canada, go to 5hourenergy.com today. That is the number 5hourenergy.com, and you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, whether you're meeting up with friends or playing some awesome golf. Get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5-hour energy shots today.
So if we're ranking or determining alarm level, one of the two, the concerns on the defensive side of the ball. Actually, that's 2 different questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you were ranking your concerns within what we saw from the defense today, the first team defense, whether it's linebacker, secondary, defensive front, pass rush, whatever, what's your hierarchy after today? And then let's talk about like where the alarm level is, because it is just a preseason game. But again, this is against the Eagles backups, and the Bengals were missing some guys on defense too. But let's tackle those 2 questions here.
Pass rush. You know, I think that's it. And you could say, oh, well, Trey will come back, and that's fine. But you need someone in multiple of these other guys to win. And they weren't going up against starters. Like that's what sucks. That's what you're really talking about. It's like, I didn't notice you today. And it's not just the pass rush. I have a question for you about the Will Shipley run, so don't let me forget. But that's the frustrating thing, because you could say, oh, well, Cam and Dax weren't out there. Those are your 2 best corners.
Yep.
And okay, so that may help some. And then you could say, oh, well, Trey wasn't out there. Fine, but he was out there last year. And so you mentioned that deja vu. He was out there last year, and they still couldn't get pressure. Miles couldn't get pressure, and these other guys weren't getting pressure. And so you got to find someone else. That's why I just think Shamar is just going to matter. Not that those other guys won't. You know, we've seen Osai make plays at times. I think Miles is talented and a really good kid and could matter. But man, this should have been one of those games or one of those guys we're talking about. And we are, but not because we noticed them on the field.
Jeff Stoutland is a great coach. Philadelphia is a deep roster. They draft well. The Bengals starters should still be beating up on their second teamers.
Yes.
At least a little bit. Like,
yes.
There was maybe one clean pass rushing win. They had a nice twist. Taven Bryan gets a sack. They had some very slow developing stunts as well that I think need to be cleaned up, or maybe the deployment thereof needs to be adjusted. But when you look at the one-on-ones these guys had, there just weren't enough one-on-one wins. When I look at the box score for pressures, the numbers are just not where you want them to be. And they end up with 2 sacks on the day. Taven Bryan gets 1. Barrett Carter gets 1 on a blitz, and that was a really nice blitz for Barrett Carter. So credit to him. But when we're talking about the starting defensive line,
yep,
I thought Osai, Murphy were fine against the run. They played some assignment sound football, but just didn't create those splash plays as pass rushers against backup tackles. And you would like to see that. Miles did compress the pocket at one point, but couldn't get off the block to actually threaten the quarterback. And that's that finishing that you need to see him do at a higher level. And I didn't see a whole lot from the defensive tackles either, but you wanted to talk about the explosive Shipley run as well.
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk about it, and I want to ask you, this has been kind of like a viral thing that on some podcasts with NFL players or like social media teams will do with their players. You know, could an average person get a yard in an NFL game? How many yards are you getting on that?
Like 4.
Dude. Yeah, I mean, it's such a big.
Are
you sure? Are you sure you're not getting a first down? I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Like, I don't know who tackles you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure. Because the angles are all so different. Like the pursuit angles are different.
Oh,
The blocks have to hold on longer. I'm much slower than Will Shipley.
no, I know, but this is. I think
the
I'm
so
getting to the 50. I think I'm getting to the 50. I'll say that. So
so
it
so what
started.
happens on this play, in my opinion, is TJ Slayton just goes the wrong way. He and Chris Jenkins end up in the same gap. I think Demetrius Knight is a little bit slow to react and ends up getting walled off a little bit more easily than he should. Logan Wilson maybe attacks the wrong shoulder, but maybe doesn't, because maybe that's just where TJ Slayton's supposed to be. And then Logan did his job, assuming that TJ Slayton did his job right, but TJ Slayton didn't do his job right. I think I'm speculating. I don't know what exactly the call was in the room there, but him slanting against the grain and leaving a massive chasm exactly where the point of attack of the run is probably not the design there. I assume. I'm making an assumption. But I think it's that simple. I think you put that on film and TJ Slayton says, yeah, I went the wrong way. And
Yeah.
the linebackers, I think, need to be a little bit better there too. Outside of that, the run D was okay. I think a lot of people are very concerned about the secondary. I'm concerned about the safety depth after this game. Dejan Anthony in the game early. And this is, we've been talking about safeties all offseason, almost as much as we've been talking about guards. So you got the persistent need for a guard, you got a need for a swing tackle, you got a need for a safety potentially that feel like moves that you would like to see the Bengals make after this game. But the way I can cope on the defensive side of the ball with the secondary is that, well, they're missing guys. And I think it does look different when Cam's out there and when Dax is out there, but they've also had to go to their depth at corner every single year. And so I'm not sure if there's a move to be made there that makes them better, but there's not really a level of this defense that I felt great about in this game. For the starters anyway.
No. And that's what you just, all I really wanted is like, oh, well, he flashed.
Yeah, give us some
Like
standout performances.
Yeah, even if you give up the 10 points, okay, fine. But oh man, that guy was really good, or that. And instead, we're going to be talking about, at least as of now, who knows what happens in practice on Saturday, Sunday. But like, you're right. Like, what free agent should they sign at safety is going to be a topic. They need, if Geno Stone is hurt and misses any time, they need another safety. Like they just do. I mean, who are you going to?
Yeah.
So, it's we're going to be talking about offensive guard, offensive tackle, depth, and the defense. Time is a flat circle, Jake.
Yeah.
And we have reached that point. Joe's awesome. Jamar's great.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The
one ripple could be Dylan Fairchild. Maybe that's what's
I hope
the ripple in the circle,
It sounds great.
At least there's some progress there. Barrett Carter stock up to me after this game. Oren Burks looked good in the second team as well. McKinley Jackson, I don't understand why he's not in the game until the fourth quarter. This is one of my snap count things, and like when these guys are being used. Like Howard Cross on the field earlier in the game, McKinley Jackson, the fifth defensive tackle to get into the game. And it was Howard Cross with Taven Bryan and with the twos. And I thought McKinley Jackson finished the game real strong. Now, given he's going against the threes, and when the Eagles did drop down another tier on their depth chart, that's when you started to see some pressures actually getting home and some of the Bengals backups winning. But McKinley Jackson played well. He had 3 TFLs and was at the point of attack and disruptive in the run game. So weird to me that McKinley Jackson is playing in the fourth quarter. Weird to me that multiple tight ends played with all 3 quarterbacks. Like Tanner Hudson's still on the field with the third quarterback and scores a touchdown with Desmond Ridder. I said we come back to him, and we're really late to come back to him. But Tanner Hudson, 2 touchdowns in a preseason game, as his roster spot is obviously threatened here by Noah Fant. But he has some fans, obviously, in the quarterback room in Cincinnati. So that'll be interesting as that plays out as well. But
I don't really know how you part ways with. I mean, he's just fights hard for that touchdown. Then he goes out there with Ridder and makes a nice toe tap touchdown. I had the fourth down conversion on that drive as well. Like that's tough to cut. But maybe they will. But man,
maybe they can trade him.
Joe would be mad. Joe wants him. That's what's interesting,
So maybe Cam Grandy's not as safe as we think, but he's probably the best blocking tight end on the team, and I think I'm including Drew Sample in that, despite what they would say.
Just because Drew Sample's solid at it doesn't mean he's great at it. That's what I'll say. Like I think he's been sold as this like elite blocker. He's fine.
They trust him. He does his job. Like they can trust that he's going to do what they want him to do, but it doesn't mean he's always going to execute it at a high level, as we've seen over the years. Not to take shots at Drew Sample here. He was
we're not. But like, yeah, is Grandy better? Like he might be better. I don't know. It's not like we're talking about George Kittle. Like he's or Gronk. Like prime Gronk was an elite blocker. If you need him to be able to, it's not that.
Any other stock up, stock
Drew
down?
Sample is not Gronk. Clearly, that's
wow.
That's
James, what do you hot take, James? Man, unreal way to end the show. We'll
Burrow's Brady though.
Some stock up, stock down, maybe in our next episode. We'll have a couple of practices, so we'll get to see how the Bengals maybe adjust some of the rotations in practice and see whether McKinley Jackson gets in there with the twos a little bit more. See what happens at wide receiver, where having a great camp but not a great game was 18. Why am I blanking on
Isaiah Williams?
Isaiah Williams
didn't have a great game. I mean, he just I didn't really notice him much.
He had that ball go off his helmet.
Yeah.
Bit of a high throw.
Charlie Jones getting in ahead of Jermaine Burton. By the way, real quick, I don't really need to see Jermaine Burton pop tonight. Wouldn't change my opinion on Jermaine at all. I've seen him do it in the preseason. I just need to make sure this guy's doing the right things off the field. I know he's not competing with Andre. I've seen that like this week. That's not a thing. Like, don't trust anyone that says that, because people that say that have no idea. Jermaine Burton is not competing with Andre Iosivas for the third wide receiver spot. That's not even a debate, a conversation.
I didn't know that was a thing either. Charlie Jones was the first wide receiver off the bench.
And that's a reminder that Charlie has the trust and produced. I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, Charlie made some plays. Was he their second leading receiver? No, Tanner Hudson was. And then Jawoy Mays had the big play. 3 catches, 41 yards for Charlie Jones. There's also some of you out there that have some thoughts about the backup battle, the backup quarterback battle. There's not a battle there right now. But the third stringers did try. Desmond Ridder led a touchdown drive. A couple nice throws on that drive. Finished 7 for 16 for 5.7 yards per attempt, which is a better stat line than Jake Browning had, to be fair, but not great. And we had a fun pick six that wasn't for Joe Giles Harris, right? Joe Giles Harris. Yeah, he was touched down, but that would have been a very comical, very preseason pick six had it counted. I was chuckling. That was a fun.
And Money Mac is back, baby. 51.
Yeah, but no one differentiating themselves, as far as my very, very uneducated eye can tell, in the long snapper battle.
Yeah, you study that.
I said uneducated. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We've got a couple practices this weekend before we're back with you on Sunday. That'll probably be in the afternoon. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.
Get Trey done.